Let me tell you about a time when D&D inspired anime instead of the other way around. In 1990, the Record of Lodoss War anime came out, though I personally only watched it in the early 2000s when it was first broadcasted on German TV. I remember it like it was 20 years ago. I just started playing role-playing games maybe a year ago, maybe two. And when I saw this anime on TV with dwarves and elves and knights, I was pretty stoked. I remember it was running in German free TV, and that was the time when anime was beginning to go big in Germany, especially more serious teenage or young adult targeted anime instead of anime for small children. But it was still the early days, so Record of Lodoss War was broadcasted late at night. And I think they broadcasted all episodes in a single night, or maybe in 2 nights. And I remember I stayed up super late to watch all of it. I really hope I didn't have school the next day, but I can't really remember. This anime was produced by Studio Madhouse, which is a famous anime production company. Maybe some of you remember their work on One Punch Man, for example. And they've got some serious talent, but Record of Lodoss War it's an old anime. It's from 1990, it's still like an 80s, early 90s anime. So you can see where the budget went and where it didn't. So you've got scenes with beautiful fluid animation, and then you got scenes that are just stills with mouse flaps, or maybe not even that. You got like 2-minute intro in each episode, a 2-minute outro. You have to get your running time somewhere. And the same is true for the music, surprisingly. They've got some really beautiful pieces that sound like orchestral music to my layman ears. And then they've got this like 80s, 90s synthesizer music. Like they've got a basic MIDI suite to make all the music with, and couldn't afford to get any more expensive music made. So it's a bit hit and miss, but when it hits, Record of Lodoss War is still a beautifully made anime. So what is so D&D about Record of Lodoss War? Just about everything. I mean, look at our protagonists. They're the quintessential D&D party. We've got Pan, our young and eager hero of the story, who's a fighter. Then we've got his childhood friend Ido, who trained 4 years to become a priest, so he's the cleric of the party. Then there's literally the wizard of the village, Slane, the wizard of the party, who studied years and years reading books to memorize magical spells. And we've got Slane's old friend Gim, who's an old dwarf. And not dwarf fighter or anything. No. Old school D&D dwarf. The race is your class. Then finally the party is completed by Woodchuck, the thief, who is introduced characteristically for a thief in a prison, and they have to break him out at some point, or rather get him from the ruins of the prison. And finally, Deedlit, the elf and later love interest of our heroic young hero Pan, who's an elf So the fighter magic user hybrid that the elf class used to be. And in the first episode, they make their way through an old dwarven mine. They encounter traps. They have to navigate in the darkness, and at the end of it, they have to fight against a dragon. They're doing a dungeon crawl, and it's glorious. Only after the first episode do we go into the background of the characters. We meet Pan before he became a fighter, but basically he was the village idiot. Basically, Pan was a teenage boy living in a remote village, and his father used to be a heroic knight, but he had fallen in disgrace. Anyhow, the whole region, the whole island where this anime is set, Lodoss, is becoming more dark. The dark gods, the dark forces are rising. And the village is attacked by goblins, and Pan and his party have to save the village, which is very classical introduction to D&D. And then they have to go on a heroic quest to find out what is going on and possibly stop it. Now, the really interesting thing about this is where this story comes from. The anime comes from a series of fantasy novels, Record of Lodoss War, with the same name, that had been published a few years prior. Really popular series of novels in Japan. The whole series has sold over 10 million copies in Japan alone. But this series of novels is based on earlier series of books, and those books are what you call a replay or a record. And that is literally the record of someone playing an RPG. So it's like a live Twitch Critical Role session, but in written form. These kind of RPG records are actually a popular form of media in Japan, quite well liked. And those records had a great role in the popularity of the most popular RPG system in Japan, which is Call of Cthulhu. And I can't help but imagine that this replay, this role-playing game, influenced Japanese horror movies in like the 2000s and 2010s that became really famous and then later adapted by Hollywood. Japanese originals are scarier though. Anyway, I find this concept of the record really intriguing. Similar to a well-made live Twitch session, the game master will prepare to the best of his ability, and all of the players will hopefully bring their A game, play it to the best of their ability, and really make a good show of it, and do a great and dramatic performance and story. But what you don't get in the records is all the mucking about in between in-game events. It's like an edited version. You don't get all the out-of-game commentary, you don't get the dice rolls, you don't get rules discussion or anything. Just the recount of what happened in the game. There's one format I've listened on a podcast from. I can't remember from the top of my head. I put the name down here and put a link in the description below. What these three dudes from that podcast is doing is what they call cinematic actual play. So they will record their role-playing session, and then they will go and edit it and edit out everything that is unnecessary and boring, and put in great music and sound effect to make it more entertaining. A few years ago, there was a Kickstarter from a German role-playing publisher, and they wanted to make a D&D and OSR clone titled Record of Dragon War. So hugely influenced by Record of Lodoss War and where that came from. And they were hiring some German manga artists to do the illustrations, and I saw so much potential in that. I mean, if you could put that in like a small booklet, like in manga format, you could put that right next to the mangas on the shelf. And in contrast to like Western comic books, which are only sold in big bookshops or specialized comic shops, you can get manga anywhere. Any bookshop, any newspaper store, at the tank station. And if you could put this RPG system right next to the manga, maybe have a manga series running in parallel, maybe publish records, do some illustration but mostly text form records of great actual play of this role-playing game, put that next to it. That really could get new players into the RPG scene from the young manga readers that can get that stuff anywhere. I personally saw great potential there. Sadly, the project so far has not seen the light of day. It's been mired in problems with the company being acquired by another company, I think now 2 times over. And it's in production hell, basically. And I don't expect it will ever come out. But by any chance, if a big German manga publisher, big international manga publisher is watching this video, I'd be interested in working with you to develop this D&D inspired old school role-playing game, to put it in the manga shelves. Just putting it out there. So yeah, if you haven't seen Record of Lodoss War yet, I can highly recommend it. It's a great anime, and there are follow-up series on that. There are light novels and mangas and everything. It's a great contrast to all the super high fantasy stuff that is put out nowadays, be it in D&D itself or in anime and manga form. Record of Lodoss was so down to earth with its themes and storytelling. It's actually quite refreshing. And if you like this video, consider leaving a like down below and subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.